Call to order the 902nd meeting of the Board of Directors of MSAD number 27. Roll call.
Keith Jandro.
Here.
Isabella Lozier. Not here. Abby Pooler.
Here.
Toby Jandro.
Here.
Leroy McKenzie.
Here.
Gary Sibley.
Here.
And Sarah Ashley.
Here.
Any adjustments?
We have no adjustments today.
Public participation. Joey signed up.
Do I just stand here and talk?
Sure.
Okay. So I was just following up on the last couple meetings you guys had. I just wanted some clarification. I was looking at the survey that was sent out on, I'll put my old name glasses on, August 14. There were 654 participants, and of that, go through it real quick. 75% of those who took it, of the students, elementary students, voted for optional masks. 78, looks like high school students voted for optional masks. Let me see here. 78 percent of the parents, elementary school parents, voted for optional masks. 70% of the high school student parents voted for optional masks. Let's see here. The staff members, Forkin Elementary staff members, 65% wanted optional masks. High school staff members, 55%. And let's see here. The community members were, hang on, 72%. So I guess my first question is, the school board members who saw that survey, did you know how many people had voted for that? To anybody who voted against it? Did anybody know how many people have participated in the survey?
Yeah, we went over.
Yeah. And how high the percentage for optional masks was? Okay. So what was the reason for the second survey that was sent out like 10 days later or something like that? Or a couple weeks later?
I think the second survey, I'd actually asked for it after the outbreak,
Okay.
so-called outbreak in Brewster County, to see if the public sentiment, student sentiment had changed with the increased COVID cases. And I think as you can see by that it did drop a little,
Sure.
but it was still overwhelmingly in support of optional masking.
Sure, okay. And then I guess my next question was, even though it decreased a little bit, I mean, we did see a decrease in the participants of the survey, but I guess I'm just looking for an answer from the school board members who voted against that. I guess, number one, what was the purpose of the survey if you were gonna vote in opposition of the survey? If anybody wants to, yeah, go ahead.
I didn't ask for the survey, not that I don't appreciate, everyone's opinions, but I hadn't asked. And the first time we voted, I did vote optional,
Okay.
and then I did change my vote. And that was based solely on the idea that if there were too many positive cases in the school, that we were gonna have to go remote.
Okay.
Because that was my biggest, I can't speak for everyone, but that was my biggest concern, was that we would go remote, and that's what I was trying to avoid.
Sure. And did you think the parents did or did not know that?
I think that maybe some might have known that, but no one asked me.
Sure. Okay. Any other school board members who voted against want to comment why they voted against that many people?
I'd like to make a point of order. This is not new business on our agenda.
Actually, it's under school reintegration plan, old
Past
business.
vote, are we revisiting the vote here?
Well, I'm just want a clarification as a taxpayer and a parent with some children in school who don't want to wear masks.
For me, Joey, I voted against the first round, the motion here, which was optional.
Yeah.
And then I voted for the mandatory masking, similar to Abby. I don't think the decision was between optional masking and mandatory masking. I think it was between mandatory masking or going remote with the amount of quarantining that we were gonna have to do. And like Gary, I like to get a pulse for where things are at, but at the same time, I feel like this is a medical thing, and at our first meeting, our school nurses, our district physician, our 2 building admins both had urged for mandated masking. And in one of our reports tonight, they talked about we had 78 students quarantined during the first 3.5 weeks of school. Most of those were unvaccinated. That would have been a lot higher if it had been optional. So for me, it was a decision to keep kids in school. And that's kind of where I based my decision.
So I guess my next question is, so what is the plan moving forward? Are we gonna be eliminating surveys altogether and just hope that the medical advisor just kind of runs the show, or how is that gonna go moving forward? Like, what's the point of a survey if really it's not gonna hold any water?
Well, Joey, I'd just like to kind of reiterate what the other board members were saying. Once you bring in all the data as far as hospital admissions, ICU beds being full.
Okay, can I ask you a quick question, Keith, about the ICU admissions? Do you know how our ICU is doing currently? Is it pretty full right now?
Listen, we can go on all night.
No, I know, I'm just kind of curious.
We're here to make some tough decisions.
Sure.
And they're not always the popular decisions.
But you said
That's why we're
because of
elected to
ICU
talk.
admissions. So what are they?
At the
He was
time-
talking about the last time, Joey. He was answering your question.
No, I know, and I was just kind of
If you
asking.
came here to fight with board
I
members,
didn't come to fight with board members. I'm just asking if.
then let him answer the
Okay,
question,
I just
Joey.
wanted to ask you real quick. I'll ask after.
So initially I had voted for optional masking. And I think a week went by, we heard some information from the hospital regarding new admissions, which I felt like we should address as a board, which we did. Granted, we had survey information from our constituents that stated they wanted optional masking. But to say that those people had all the information at the time regarding our hospital admissions, I don't think they did. Same as we did initially when we voted for optional masking. So I think it was up to us to make that tough decision at the time to just go ahead and mask up, avoid remote learning, which nobody wants to go down that road again, and move on.
Okay. So I guess to ask a question back, so at the time when you make reference to ICU admissions and things like that, I mean, what were the ICU admissions? Do you know what the numbers were at the time?
I don't have the data off
And
my
nobody,
head.
yeah?
No.
Does any of the school board members have that data? You do, Ben?
Well, I could tell you that when we had the second board meeting, the ER was at capacity for COVID-related patients is what was conveyed to me at that time.
Okay, so there's an ER, and an ER is essentially a triage. You're in ER less than maybe a couple hours before they triage you out. So a full ER doesn't really equate to much. So just so everybody knows that. Our ER gets full often without any COVID patients. So I don't know that that's a real good argument. But anyway, so I guess my next question would be, so what's the plan moving forward? Is the board looking for herd immunity, or, I guess?
We had a plan at the last meeting, and we said what it was. It was we were going to remain as we're doing until we moved down to, what was it, yellow?
We said,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we had a plan at the meeting, and it was set forth. It's too bad you couldn't have made it, because
Yeah,
this would have been a better time for you to challenge us.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah,
we could
I
have done
could've
something
went
about it.
ahead pre-
Unfortunately, now it's maybe laying $1 short.
Sure.
But we came up with a plan that we would shift upon yellow. We would consult with our medical staff, unless they felt as though situation arose that would warrant us deviating from that plan. So let's say we had an isolated incident in Colton where there was a spike, and they felt as though things were better than what the color code reflected. Then we would talk to our medical staff, and they may be able to bring us back to school without masks sooner if the actual facts on the ground reflected something that was different than what the color code was. So that was our plan, was basically to follow the color code unless the medical staff said that the color code was either too much or too little. Is that, am I correct in that? Does everybody else remember that the same? Yes. That was, so we did have a plan going forward, and that was the plan, was to basically play by ear and see how we.
So again, so moving forward, so let me ask you this. I know I'm probably timed, I guess, I'm sorry, but, so when you sent out the survey, were we in the blue? Was that what had happened, or?
The first survey, we were in the yellow.
Okay.
The second survey, we had moved to red.
And then where, are we still in the red?
We are currently still in the red.
Okay. And then what dictates the color, so I can't really.
So, yeah, this is how the US CDC determines a transmission risk. Essentially, anything that is 100 positive cases per 100,000 people, skewed for population variance, that's considered high. And then you can see, the lower ranges. So anything over 100 is considered high. Right now, Aroostook County today, according to the US CDC, is at a transmission rate of 298.26, so almost 300.
And then what was, could you go back to the chart real quick?
Sure. Let me go back. So your threshold to leave high is 100. We're at nearly 300 right now.
Okay. So that's the plan, is just to go by this, and once it comes down to yellow, we can do unmasking? Is that what the?
No, we're gonna follow the colors unless our medical staff tells us we should do, that it's safe to do otherwise. So if the numbers were to drop, because one of the issues is we're a big county. So one of the issues is, what if things are really bad in Holton and they taper off here, okay, for whatever reason? And that's one of the issues that kept coming up in our meetings. People would come forward and say, well, what if this is just Holton and Presque Isle's problem and not our problem? Which is a legitimate concern, because it's a big county. So we included language in there that allowed our medical staff to come forward with us, or we could even ask, is it really that bad here? I mean, it gives us the option to revisit it before the color is there, as I understand it. I'm just checking, if I don't always remember things as well as I think.
I think too that the concern was that we wouldn't, in making the plan, we wouldn't have the freedom to make the choice as a board. It would be more dictated by our medical advisor, and we wanted correct me if I'm wrong, we wanted the freedom to revisit if, we saw certain trends in the community.
So there's a release valve, Joey. It's not a strict reliance on the numbers.
Sure.
There's a release valve. The board can deal with it.
Okay, so you're going with your medical advisor, give or take some information, and as far as the surveys are concerned, are you just not going to be sending those out anymore, or do you think that was is that a good tool for the board? Did you feel the first time?
I'll go on a limb. I think the surveys were not a good tool.
Okay.
Because they weren't affirmed. There was no way to validate them. I voted 3 times just to see if I could, and I did. I'm guessing there were people at home just voting, especially the first one where you could vote with the same email 100 times. It's not good data. It's numbers, but it's not good data. It's not data that I think we should necessarily rely on, because it wasn't vetted. I mean, Ben, am I wrong?
No, it's fair.
No. I mean, I use fake emails. Like I said, I was like, something Martin at cdc.org was one of my votes.
Sure.
I'm sure that wasn't called, and I don't work for the CDC. So it's not a good tool necessarily. I mean, this isn't the Muskie School where we're doing real data collection. I personally, unless we're going to do the vetting, am not necessarily a big fan of surveys because they're so easy to swamp. We saw it, I mean, Joey, We saw, we saw it, and I think there was a lot of chit chat around this when we had other big decisions in our region, where there was some question about, where people asked these questions. And I think, personally, I don't want to count on them. I'd rather count on somebody who's here, who's willing to say something. Our nurses, our doctors, we had what, 7, 8 doctors here? And we get a survey that I can't be 100% sure is correct. I'm going to go with the people who are here. And that's me. I'm not speaking for the board. The board may love these surveys. Personally, I'm not a big fan. But that's me, personally.
Well, I mean, I like them. I thought it was a great way to reach out to the community. I just, hopefully in the future, I guess if you guys decide to do that again, that there's a way to kind of combat any multiple voting or anything like that. So that's pretty much all I had. I just kind of wanted to know. So really, just to be clear, the plan moving forward is to hopefully you guys get in the orange, and if somebody tells you otherwise, you might change your mind and go optional earlier or later.
Well, we can ask anytime too. Like if we want to talk to our medical folks, we can ask Ben, and Ben will get them in, and they will do a disclosure with us. We don't. They're not the ones who make the decision. This board makes the decision, and that was one thing that Gabby was just talking about. They were very clear about. We get to ask the medical staff when we want to revisit this. It's not up to them. We're the elected officials. Ultimately, it rests on us. If we all get voted out for voting on this, so be it. It'll be our fault. It shouldn't be up to the medical staff entirely, but we refer to them. But it's not like Dr. Hart comes in and says, "Okay, guys, I need you to do something different." That's not what we're doing. So just, and I know it's a small distinction.
Well, I
but
know
it's
it
an
seems
important
that
one.
way, though. It seemed like that's what happened, but.
No, we were very clear that that was a distinction we wanted to be clear about, is that
Okay.
ultimately this board is gonna make the decision, not the medical staff, because we cannot delegate that to a not elected official. We have to keep that for ourselves. I think the board was all very clear on that distinction. Whether or not, I mean, Gary and Leroy voted against this, but I think we did agree that it should ultimately up to the board and not up to a medical professional to make the decision. And I think that's the one thing the board absolutely agreed with.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joey. Moving on to approval of minutes for the regular meeting 899, special meeting 900, and board planning meeting 902.
901.
902 on here.
Oh.
Yeah, it's 901.
It should be 901.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Approval of financial statements for April, May, June, and July of 2021.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Superintendent's report, pool testing.
So I'm not a nurse, but I'm tasked with giving you guys a brief overview of pool testing, and your nurses apologize for not being able to be here. They had committed to the original date for our meeting, but there's soccer tonight. So soccer trumps board meetings. We all know that, and so I will quickly go through just some nuts and bolts about pool testing. Some people have some questions about it, and I just wanted to make sure that you were aware, so that if somebody asked you about how that all works, you could essentially take them through it. Board members, I will also share, this was a presentation that was shared with me from Nurse Melissa in Pelletier in Madawaska. She presented to the Madawaska School Committee. I've changed some of the slides to fit your data here in 27, but I will share these slides with you afterwards. The benefits of weekly testing, you know the old saying, knowledge is power. Without knowing if COVID-19 is present in our schools, it's tough for us to make informed decisions about safeguarding our school community and continuing in-person learning. This program will provide us with an objective data regarding COVID-19 cases in our schools, which will help us make objective decisions regarding the measures we need to make in order to keep everyone safe. Questions that we get a lot when people are thinking about signing up: should I sign up if vaccinated? It is recommended that vaccinated individuals sign up just because vaccinated individuals can spread COVID-19. So it is important that even though you're vaccinated, that you help participate in the program. So what are the reasons to take part in it? It's a proactive measure versus being reactive. So instead of waiting for you to get sick and then potentially spread the virus to others, because we all know that once you're sick, you have been infectious for upwards of 3 to 5 days. This is a good way to catch it early so that you're not spreading it. It's to be sure that you're not knowingly passing COVID to other students and staff, and to allow you, if you're unvaccinated, to remain in school if considered a close contact to a positive case. So something that we talked to you guys about last time is that if you're not vaccinated, what are some other ways you can stay in school? Pool testing is that other golden ticket to help stay in school. So how does it work? Pool testing is a highly sensitive PCR test. So you hear about the 2 different types of tests. PCR is the standard test. What happens is, and we actually did it for the first time this morning, staff and students swab themselves. Essentially, you're doing 4 swirls with the little Q-tip thing in each nostril, and then that's essentially what the test is. It's not the brain poking one. It's just right at the surface. I was a little nervous this morning. I've yet to have a COVID test, and today was my very first one. Nurses do help our littles, so the pre-K age students, they're doing some fun dancing, boogie down type things, and getting them acclimated to that as well. We can put anywhere from 5 to 25 swabs in one tube, so one collection, one pool, if you will. Right now, the DOE is leaning towards bigger, larger pools because of shortages in the follow-up testing. So they're hoping that larger pools will result in less testing that they have to do on the other end, up to 25. So we're trying to capture entire classrooms, homerooms, and that's what we're aiming for. If we have a room that's larger than 25, like for RISE, for example, we're breaking that up into pods of 25 or as close to that we can get. We ship out the tubes by courier by 10 a.m. on Tuesday, so those went out after today. It might be a little bit later, it might be 11 or 12. Then the results come back to us via the system that we have, the computer system, 24 to 48 hours. Essentially, it's very simple. You wash your hands, you open up the swab packet, swirl the nose 4 times, boogies go down in the test tube gets sealed, and then that's what gets shipped away. All of the pools are labeled, pool 1, pool 2, pool 3, pool 4, so that we know who's in which pool and which pool is going out. This is an actual example of something that happened in Madawaska several weeks ago. When tests came back, you'll see that pool 6 was a negative pool. Pool 7, however, was a positive pool. So if that comes up on our end when we receive the results, those individuals who are in the positive pool have a follow-up testing that's done to each individual in the pool. So if it's 20 kids in that pool, we know there's a positive somewhere. We're doing a follow-up test with a Binax Now, the rapid antigen test, and we get results in 15 minutes. The goal here is to find the positive result from the pool. Hopefully, it's only one. You may have multiple people in the pool because depending on how long that individual was positive, that may have spread. But the goal, again, is to find who's positive. I'm going to go back to Madawaska. This case right here was a positive soccer player in the middle school. Had not yet spread it to teammates, caught it early enough. However, when they did the follow-up testing, advised the family to go get tested, the entire family was positive. So 5 members of the family were also positive. All asymptomatic, amazingly, but so it did help that family remain in quarantine. Points to remember: students and staff who are unvaccinated, if they take part in this pool testing, they will have to quarantine in the public, but they will not have to quarantine in school. So if you are in a pool testing program, you're a close contact. The theory here is because you're getting weekly tests, we're testing you often enough that it's safe to continue to go to school and school-related events. So you can stay on the soccer team, you can do all those things. You are recommended to quarantine outside of school, however. If you're vaccinated and taking part in pool testing, you will not have to retest at any time between the weekly pool testing unless you become symptomatic. And pool testing here takes place every Tuesday morning. For Fort Kent Elementary School, we're doing it homeroom by homeroom. Here at CHS, Nurse Monique had a station set up here and called down pools one at a time. The pools came down, did the swab, and we were done in no time. So here are your numbers. Oh, did you have a question?
Can you explain how that first point makes any sense at all?
So a lot of this is based on how can we keep kids in school. And so the theory behind this is that if you are somebody who's getting regularly tested, and regularly here is defined as weekly, then you are safe to remain in school. Now, why they're recommending a quarantine outside of school, I'm assuming, Mr. Sibley, it's because most areas outside of school are not universally masking, and that's the theory behind that. Whereas in school, most schools are universally masking. So even a positive individual in school will not spread it as easily because they're behind the mask. However, when they're outside of school, their mask is down. I'm assuming that, but that's a great question. Your numbers, as of today, we had 209 staff and students at CHS VRMS signed up for pool testing, and 280 staff and students at Fort Ken Elementary. What we've learned from our other Valley Unified schools is once this gets rolling, we see those numbers increase because, especially at the elementary level, they're seeing their friends swab, and I want to pick my nose too, so they go home and say, I want to do that too. So we will probably see increased numbers as we go. One thing that we've been discussing is we really want to promote our athletes for the winter sport to participate in this. You know, we're not going to hammer home the please vaccinate, please vaccinate. People have already decided if they're going to vaccinate or not, and they have the right to do that. But what we're trying to say is, hey, if you can stay in a pool testing program and you're not required to quarantine, you're not hurting your teammates. You're not going to have to, you know, sit out for the next 2-3 games. So we're kind of using it as a way to stay on the team and also stay in school as well. But we're hopeful that by, having our athletes consider it, that maybe it'll trickle down to the other students as well. So easy, safe, no cost to the school. The big work is the setup, which has been done. After that, the big work is if we get a positive result. So today we had our first pool testing, 24 hours to 48 hours, more likely going to be by Wednesday morning we'll get our results. If there's positive in one of those pools or many pools, that's where it's a little time consuming because now you've got to go back to those pools and test every individual. But we have secured our pool testing coordinator who's going to be assisting with that and guiding our school nurses, so we feel confident that we're well on our way, and we're hopeful that the required quarantines that we had before harvest break really taper down now because we have this in place. Questions? Not bad for a non-nurse, huh? I actually went to school for nursing for 1 year. Yeah, no, that wasn't good.
Updates and notifications?
I just have a few updates. Our staff vaccination portal, the DHHS staff vaccination portal is up and running. A lot of controversy with that amongst schools across the state. Some schools are basically claiming that it's not a fair system because it's a self-reporting system. So some school districts are not reporting. Some are reporting everybody, including substitutes and coaches, because that was the original intent. Some are only reporting their full-time staff. Some are conveniently not reporting people who haven't responded to their surveys. So they're not saying those people are not vaccinated. They're just saying, well, we don't know what they are, so they're not marking them down. So right now, there's talk about trying to get some uniformity in that reporting system. I know that our nurses right now are working on the next month, so this would be the end of September reporting, which is due, I believe, at the end of this week. I actually had Keith reach out to me after the Bangor Daily published the initial reports, and it appeared that our VRMS numbers were down in the 40%. And when I spoke with Nurse Monique and Nurse Rebecca, it just so happens that we had to choose staff that were CHS and choose staff that were VRMS, and a lot of those staff work in both. And when they were dividing it, they were simply just, okay, one there, one there, one there. Well, a lot of one theirs that were non-vaccinated were going to VRMS. So we talked about trying to give some equity, put a vaccinated, then a non-vaccinated, and then, so that we can balance those numbers. Your true numbers, I put for you right there. FKES staff, 83% fully vaccinated, and then your CHS VRMS staff, 77% fully vaccinated. And those are those who have reported either I am vaccinated or am not vaccinated. And if they did not answer to our request, we put them as non-vaccinated. So they might be higher. Some people don't check their email. Some people don't respond to, requests for information. So that might be higher. But it's pretty good numbers, I believe. So we'll see what happens with the second report that comes out, and I'm sure the Bangor Daily News will publish that as well. Aside from that, the DOE did push out something a couple weeks ago for clarification. There's been some question about why Maine is saying they follow the US CDC guidance, but on the second hand, they're also saying when it comes to close contacts, the Maine CDC handles the SOP for close contacts. So US CDC for guidance, Maine CDC for SOPs. Why isn't it all under US, or why isn't it all under Maine? And the response that we got was the Maine CDC felt that they felt like the US CDC's guidance for close contacts was a little too lax. So Maine's is actually a little more stringent with regards to how long to quarantine, who needs to quarantine, and that type of thing. So if you do come across questions for US CDC says this for close contacts, but I've been told this by your school nurse, it's because our school nurses are following the Maine SOP. It's a little more stringent. The last thing I wanted to share with, and your data there in your notes is probably outdated since I wrote it, so we will go to the screen. This is what the trends are looking like for Aroostook County, and this is tracking up to Monday, October 4th. You can see what's been happening in the past several weeks. I was really encouraged at the beginning of harvest this was going down, and then it started to pick up again. Now we're seeing another slight decrease in trends. I did share a while ago, we're at 298. I believe at that lowest point right there, I believe we were close to 130, and I was starting to think, oh, we're going to go orange soon. But it did pick up. So hopefully, if you're following the national trends, southern states seem to be peaking out on Delta, and it looks like we're going to be the last to peak out, us and the Northwest. So hopefully, sooner than later, we'll start to see these numbers come down. Hopefully, we don't have a winter curve that pushes us back up, but I am trying to track this as closely as possible every day. I'm also trying to communicate with Dr. Hart about what she feels is going on at Northern Maine Medical. So I did reach out to her so that she could help you understand what they're seeing. She reports that the ER and the hospital facilities and staff at Northern Maine Medical Center are currently feeling the burden of COVID-19 in our local community. We are managing for now, but are certainly stretched thin. In addition, we continue to find transfers. To other facilities due to limited bed shortage around the state as a direct result of COVID-19 related use in our hospital resources. We continue to support universal masking in schools. In terms of what's best for students and themselves, the pediatric providers continue to assert that the best thing for children in these times is to keep them in school in person. This has been our experience with our patients here, as well as the official position of the American Academy of Pediatrics. So she does report that. She also got a message from and I don't know if I can consider it here. This came from, excuse me a second, I gotta go back and search. She did have a short message from Dr. St. Pierre, who also said, I would go as far as to say the situation is worse than it was. It seems like we are getting a surge of cases lately. I talked to Charlie Willett, and he said he had quite a few rapid tests that have been positive in the pharmacy too. And that just comes from Dr. Eric St. Pierre. So that's what I have from you from reaching out to Northern Maine Medical Center and the data I have for what's going on in our community. I will continue to look at it. I will say the color code is something that we have discussed as superintendents, not only Aroostook but around the state. It seems to be the standard that everyone's using. Everyone likes colors and numbers, and they don't like a whole lot of guesswork. I think what we've done, or what you've decided to, look at a movement towards one color to another, then have conversations about it. What does it mean for here in Fort Kent, Maine, and your surrounding communities? I think that's a wise way to go, so that we're not making decisions based on Holton and Presque Isle. We're making decisions based on here. That's what I have for you right now.
Early enrollment snapshot?
Me again. I did share with you an early enrollment snapshot. You all know that October is the official, and maybe we don't all know this. Leroy, since you are the newbie and Abby, schools use October 1 as the official enrollment date from year to year. So every year in the month of October, we have to do some calculations around how many students we have on October 1. And it does take time, because we have to make sure that all the transfers have gone out and all the all the different moving parts are settled. So usually we settle that by the end of the month. I want to give you a snapshot of what we see right now in relation to our enrollments. I've color-coded it in a way where you can see, okay, pre-K last year, their kindergarten this year, so you go yellow to yellow. You can see that pre-K went from 51 to 56. You can see that kindergarten went from 58 to 60. So you can see how that moves. The two biggest factors obviously are your graduation from last year, 58 graduates, and you had 49 pre-K students as of last week. So you can see that you already have a net loss of 9 from graduating to incoming, and then you try to make that up as we go. So your total, as it stands right now, 842 last year and 828 this year. I also factor in what's happening with homeschoolers. 41 last year as of October 1st. Right now we have 45, and 20 of those are first-time homeschoolers. So that's a big increase in first-timers. We saw a lot come back that were out last year, which is great, but a whole set of new ones going out. Your outgoing superintendent's agreement. Superintendent's agreement is an agreement that a student can attend school at another school agreed upon by superintendents. When it comes to me being superintendent of the 3 Valley Unified Schools, I defer to my principals and I say, okay, principals, what do you think about this request? We have denied some of those in the past, that parents have appealed to the commissioner, and the commissioner's office does sometimes overturn those. So that is something that does happen. This year you have 16 outgoing superintendent's agreements. You have the majority of those going to SAD 33, and I believe you have 1 going to Fort Fairfield, and that's part of a custody thing. So the same thing this year as last year, 16 and 16. Your incoming superintendent's agreements, same as last year, 5 and 5, and those are all coming from 33. So I will let you know at next meeting what the official comparison for October to October is, but this is just a snapshot right now.
Administrator reports we have in the packet.
You do, and they are here if you want to grill them. Especially Mr. Nadeau. He likes to sweat.
Anyone have anything for the administrators, or? No? Guess we can move on to committee reports.
For committee reports, I do have some policies, and these are, the first one obviously is one that I took to you last meeting and I forgot to put in the package, so it is policy BED, remote participation in school committee, school board meetings. When we were in the civil emergency last year, you were allowed to attend board meetings. In fact, we all attended at some point or another remotely. When that civil emergency sunsetted on July 30, the end of July, we now have to have a policy in place if we're going to use remote options for board meetings. And it's not as wide open. It's not just because I feel like staying home tonight. There has to be, and you can see on the first page there, number 1, the existence of an emergency or other issue that requires the board to meet by remote methods. And it does define what emergencies are. And then number 2 is illness or physical condition or a temporary absence from the area governed by the board that causes a member to face significant difficulties as well. So that one does factor in. And then you have number 3, which we've eliminated there. It doesn't pertain to you. Number 4, the area of the board's jurisdiction includes geographic characteristics that impede slow travel. And I was thinking that because we live in an area where snowstorms may impede, travel, especially you look at, where Keith is traveling from, that may happen where the most of us are closer to town. So this would provide the board the ability to zoom into meetings in one of those cases. This is a first read right now, so you don't have to approve it, but I do think it's a good idea to have that option available so that we have as many board members present during a meeting. Any questions on that one? The next one are policies JKAA and JKAR, and this is based on a change that's happened in law. The use of physical restraint and seclusion. There is some changes in the law. A lot of what's happened is the language around when physical restraint and seclusion is allowed to happen has to be something that's an imminent risk. That's the language that's really being pushed here in this one. It's not just because it's convenient for staff to hold a student back instead of letting them bolt a little bit. It has to be imminent risk or serious physical injury is about to happen. So really tightening up how we're allowed to use any kind of restraint and seclusion. I will let you know that we have a whole slew of staff. Is Jill here? We have a whole slew of staff that you can ask Jill about what it entails that get trained annually. It's called safety care training. And essentially it's those staff members who work with students that may exhibit behaviors that would require some kind of restraint or seclusion. And those individuals, like I said, are trained annually. They know from that training when to restrain or seclude and when not to. 9 out of 10 times it's not to. It's to protect yourself and make sure that no one's getting injured. Protect the students so they don't get injured. But this really refines how that all works. So you can go see what's been added and eliminated from your current policy, and the JKAAR, which is the procedure policy. And again, this is a first read, so if you have any questions about all of that, we can review that during your second read. Jill, is there anything you wanted to add to that?
We're probably going to see an increase in the reports that we fill out for restraint and seclusion, only because, like, if you have a child with autism that starts running towards the road, you're going to have to hold, you're not gonna let them run, or different things like that. So, anytime that you even touch them to guide them to move them, it's going to be paperwork that's written up, so it might look like an increase.
Because of those lawyers out there.
Just to let everyone know, that's probably gonna happen.
Any questions on that one? The last one I have is your actual second read of child find. Took this to you last board meeting, just a very small change. It moves the age from 20 to 22. So what you see in front of you is the revised version, and you'll see that first sentence is what's been revised. Located and evaluated who are school age 5 until the day in which the child reaches 22. That is the line that's been changed from your current policy. of this, I would entertain a motion for adoption as a second read.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Leroy? In favor? Unanimous. Items of business, old business. School reintegration.
And this is just something I'm gonna keep as a rolling agenda item, your reintegration plan. Number one, we are required by the Maine Department of Education to revisit this plan at least every 6 months. I think we'd be wise to visit it more often than that. Not to, not to rehash everything, but if you have questions about, where things stand, decisions that have been made, this would be the appropriate time with respect to, our safe return to school. One thing that I did want to share with you that we're going to be adding to that, it's the close contact flow chart that's already been shared out, but we do want to make it part of our plan so that people understand. I think Sarah said it best a while ago. The decisions that you guys have made with regards to masking, especially at the elementary level, is not about mask or unmask. It's more about mask or go home. And you can see how this, this flow chart, helps us make those determinations about when to send students home. And keep in mind, how we're deciding for elementary kids. We're going to go through a lot of no's, in that plan. So number one is the individual fully vaccinated? For your entire elementary kid, a student classroom, that's no. So that's always going to be a no, and you have to go down the road for that. For our middle high school students, it might be some yes. So you can go down and say, yeah, I'm fully vaccinated, I don't have any symptoms. You'll see that means that you're not required to quarantine. So your vaccinated folks who do not display symptoms never have to go home if they're a close contact. If you're not vaccinated, you go on to the next category. Have you tested positive for COVID-19 previously and you're within 90 days? In other words, do you have natural immunity? That's almost as I'll say as good. It's not as, if you had COVID, that's awful, but if you're okay, that's great. But if you have a natural immunity, you go down, you say, I'm not feeling sick, no quarantine required. If you've never had COVID, you keep going. Now we have a pool testing program. So this is something we didn't have before harvest. We had to skip over this line here. Now we have it. So are you participating in a school pool testing program? If your answer is yes, and you don't have symptoms, if your close contact was limited to a school setting. So this is something with pool testing. This only works in close contact with school settings. If you had a close contact this weekend at a party, that's not going to get you out. It's got to be school close contact. So if the answer is no, yes, I've only been that close contact is limited to school setting, you will not have to quarantine in school. You are going to be recommended to quarantine outside of school, and like I explained to Mr. Sibley, I believe that's because of the masking that happens in school. If you're not in a pool testing program, so we do have some students who are not vaccinated, they've never had COVID, they've decided not to be in pool testing. This is where your masking mandate helps as an additional layer. So is your school currently universal masking? We are, so you always go down right now. Do you have COVID symptoms? And yes, you have to quarantine. No, if you don't. Was your close contact limited to a classroom setting? With regards to masking, the only time that you're exempt from quarantine is if your close contact was in a classroom. It doesn't count if you're on the soccer field, doesn't count if you're in the gym, in the cafeteria, or on the bus. But if the answer is yes to that, yeah, my close contact was somebody in the classroom, you won't have to quarantine. So this is how it all works, and we feel it's really important that we're trying to communicate that to the public. In the event that we go into another model, we go into a yellow or a blue, and you all decided that we're going to have discussions about dropping the universal masking and make it optional, that last category goes away in the decision tree. So it's going to be a no, and if you don't have a vaccinated person who has not had COVID, is not in pool testing, they'll always have to quarantine if we're not universally masked. Just food for thought, and we thought this was important to add to the plan. Another thing that I know that, that at least some of you wanted to discuss was our decision in our school reintegration this year to keep pre-K as a full-day program instead of moving back to a half-day program. If you remember 2 years ago, we had tried a half-day program with success. COVID happened, we went back to a full day just because of the madness. And I do have Mr. Nadeau, Mr. Saucier here to talk on the decision on why we opted to stay with full days. And it does still have to deal with all of the demands for COVID. So, Mr. Nadeau, did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, I'll just kind of start with like two pictures. One is with our eating lunches in the classrooms, which right now we're not doing, but depending on what happens with COVID, it's always a possibility. So lunches in the classrooms, garbage cans basically in the hallways. So between that 10:30 and 12 o'clock block, 12:30 block where we're eating in the classrooms, we need our custodians. When you look at doing half-day pre-K, you're looking at losing our 2 bus driver custodians at 10:30, coming back around that 12 o'clock, 12:30 mark. So in mid-July, when we really needed to make that decision, we decided to go with a full-day pre-K because what we didn't want to do, we've already put a lot of strain on parents, but what we didn't want to do was go with our half-days and then due to those custodial concerns and safety concerns, have to switch to a full-day model. Because then you're asking parents to change their daycare arrangements from two full days a week to now it's every half day, or vice versa, those types of things. So a lot of it had to do with the fact that COVID was very much still on our radar for this coming school year, and we wanted to be prepared so that way we didn't have to make those changes for the parents and for the kids. And I know those of you that have the young kids or have had young kids, you know how making that change middle of the school year can be very detrimental. So we opted for the safe play, which was going with the full days. The teachers will tell you, I will tell you, Mr. Sidwell will tell you, that we prefer the half days educationally. In terms of COVID and safety and what's best for the kids right now, we opted for the full days. And we may go the year without having any changes, no lunches in the classroom. That was the risk.
One thing I think is going to be part of our decision-making next spring going into next summer, because we'd like to communicate what's going to happen early in the summer so that families can plan. But if we can secure a way to have help in the school midday so that our bus drivers can go out on those runs, we'll do that. It's hard to try to hire somebody for a couple hours a day to help in that capacity. So maybe it's a volunteer program. I don't know right now. Part of that factor was limiting visitors to school and that type of thing. So that's all part of the equation. That was very difficult. But we felt that since we were still in a return to school COVID plan, that what happened in 2020 to 21 continued into 21, 22. But like Mr. Nadeau says, we prefer the half day. And I think for a kid who's 4 years old, to require them to be in school all day is a lot, which is why nap time is quite a thing. Question?
I participate rarely.
Any questions on that?
I think what I would suggest is maybe for next year, where we don't know what next year's gonna look like, I think it caught some of us off guard, because we weren't expecting this. We thought we were gonna go back to half days, and we had parents and people approach us, be like, I thought you were going back to half days. So I think what I would prefer is next year in the summer, so when we have a meeting in the summer, we discuss it that way. It's not a surprise, 'cause I didn't know.
Okay.
It makes sense. I think it sounds like it was the right decision to make, but I think the board should probably make the call, so that way we'll take the heat.
Okay.
And we'll be aware of it when it comes down.
I can do that.
Board retreat?
We did have our board retreat on September 8th, and We had some great discussions, in the minutes that you approved earlier tonight. It did reflect those things that were discussed. We talked about some short-term things, ESSER funds. We talked about revolving renovation loan funds, employee recruitment. We talked about release time. We talked about homeschooling trends and vaccinations. So there was some good conversations. Then some long-term planning items, facility improvements, strategic planning. And then we did not get a chance to get into Valley Unified just because we had maximized our time. I think Leroy had to go do some assignments, and so we all had enough for that night. So the discussion at the end of that meeting was to revisit this again, have more of an open agenda where board members can speak freely about what's on their mind, what's important to them, and less of a dictated agenda, which I'm all in favor for. And so I guess the big question is, do we want to do that? And when do we want to do that? So I'll turn the floor to you guys. Saturday night, just kidding.
Sarah?
Friday night brew. I think of the one we left out was the big one that needs some discussion, and it seems like nothing's really happening on that front because everybody's kind of going, nobody wants to make the first move, maybe.
No eye contact.
Yeah. No, I got that. So I feel like that needs to be a discussion as far as, and that probably goes hand in hand with, you know, we heard from Peter last time about strategic planning and stuff, but maybe taking a step back and looking at reevaluating and seeing where things go. I think that could be a very lengthy conversation.
Yep. Agreed.
Anyone else have anything?
I think it makes sense to, instead of trying to schedule a special session, like maybe tagging on, if we have a meeting that we don't have a whole lot to cover.
Yeah.
I know, I mean, the reports from folks, it's nice, but I think it's a lot to ask the board to come in an extra day. Nobody's, so, and it's a lot to ask you and everyone else to come in an extra day.
Oh, we love it.
I'm sure. So, I mean, tagging an extra 25, 30 minutes to the end of a meeting, if we don't have a big meeting, if we don't have to do it in the gym, it seems to me a good time to discuss some of this stuff. Because, I mean, we've got a meeting coming up with Valley Unified, when, November?
You have to
Maybe
vote.
December.
Do you want the November or the December?
And, I mean, one of the things that's gonna come up is, doing a, what do you call it?
Interlocal agreement.
Well, there's the talk of doing the subcommittee on interlocal agreement, and it's like, I feel like we should, as a board, maybe figure out where we're going
Yep.
before the three of us go in there and say something, So I think we have to figure out where we're going.
Yep.
So maybe just tack it on to the end of another school board meeting if we don't have a lot going on.
Yep. I can try to keep the next board meeting light and see if we can just add that as an agenda item.
That'd be good.
I think it'd be great.
Anything else from anyone? Move on to new business, retirements,
No retirements.
resignations.
We do have a resignation of a pre-K ed tech. You'll see a letter from Abby Lavoie. She reports that it's been a truly amazing experience working at Fork Elementary School, and she's very sad to leave. Abby was actually student teaching for us and had been working for us for a couple of years as an ed tech and got an opportunity for a teaching job. So she jumped, and we wish her the best.
A motion to approve.
So I'll second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Transfers. No, resignation.
Yeah, we have one more resignation. Do we know if that's, is that official?
You didn't
So we're gonna go move forward. So, we did get, Jill did get an email, regarding a resignation of another, one of our, Ed Tech 101s at Fort Kent Elementary School, Melinda Jones, and she just has some family things going on, so, this is for Mindy Jones.
A motion,
I'll second.
any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Now transfers.
We did have some requests for transfers, so because Abby did resign, there was an opening in pre-K. And we have accepted the transfer of Janice Labby. Janice, of course, was working in the Chippy Center with our early childhood program, and was looking for something a little bit different. So she's probably going from 3-year-olds to 4-year-olds, but we have accepted that transfer. And then we did have, because Janice did transfer, we had an opening for her position as the early childhood assistant, and we've accepted the transfer of Melanie Poirier. Melanie was in the task room, or it still is in the task room, and will be transitioning. So we have a plan right now where each of them can work together and kind of learn the new position and then make the transfer.
New hires.
We do have a recommendation for a new hire. You have a letter from Jill Kelly. Jill is recommending Mandy Morin for the position of Special Education Ed Tech 3 at Fort Kent Elementary. This is to replace Elaine Guimau's position? Yep, this is to replace Elaine Guimau.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Then we have an opening at VRMS, Ed Tech 1-on-1. We have a recommendation from Jill Kelly and Mr. Kaleta for Kate Braun for that position. I do have a little typo in my notes I've mentioned Kate twice, one for this one and then one in the paragraph for the next one, so I apologize for that. But this is the real position for Kate Braun for Educational Technician 1-on-1 at VRMS.
Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
And then your last letter is from Mr. Karen and also our 2 school nurses, Monique and Rebecca. They interviewed interviewed a couple of candidates for our pool testing coordinator, and they have selected Rebecca Knowlton as the new pool testing coordinator for SED 27. Rebecca has given her 2-week notice with the company she works for as a traveling nurse. But because she does have flexibility, she actually started today just training with Monique. She was here with pool testing, helping out, and is also going to be in tomorrow to work a little bit with Nurse Rebecca. So she will be in and out until her 2 weeks are over with her current employer.
Do we have a motion? Second. Any discussion?
This is a 1-year position, just FYI, unless next year we decide we still need it.
All those in favor? Unanimous. We have a couple openings.
We do. We have 2 Fort Kent Elementary Special Education Ed Techs 1-on-1s. We have a VRMS boys basketball coach, actually the head coach and the assistant. The assistant will be dependent on the numbers that we have, but we do have both posted for now.
Moving on, MSAD 27 officers and standing committees.
So for 2021-22, you will need to elect a chairman, vice chair, treasurer, and then we'll take a look at our standing committees after we've done so.
Any nominations for chair?
Everyone's like this.
I would nominate Keith Jondro.
second nominations, is that how that works? Second nomination.
Any other nominations?
I nominate Gary Sibley.
Any other nominations? Okay, so I guess we vote, all those in favor of Keith? 2.
This is impossible.
You can vote twice.
I'll vote twice.
Yeah, I'll vote twice.
This isn't like our survey.
I don't like surveys, I don't like the voting.
All those in favor of myself?
I actually want to vote for this.
That,
You
that
seconded
nomination
it.
wasn't seconded though.
Abby.
She said he seconded it.
This is so.
I'm lost.
Yeah, I am too. I don't know how we can vote twice.
It's like Florida.
Thanks, John.
It's not my fault.
Thank you.
I think I think you can vote once.
Yeah.
I don't think you can vote twice.
So you need to figure out who you're voting
Well, I think you probably shouldn't have voted on the first nomination. No. It doesn't make sense.
I'd recommend a revote.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think we need to re-vote.
Yeah.
All those in favor of Keith for chair? 3. All those in favor of myself? 1. Keith is the chair. Nominations for vice chair. Abby?
Is that a nomination?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations?
Gary?
The first nomination was for Abigail.
Yep.
Yes. With no second? All those in favor of Abby? Abby's vice chair.
Wait, somebody up there, right? That's you.
Nomination for treasurer.
Motion to select Sarah, Ashley.
Second.
Any other nominations? All those in favor of Sarah? Sarah's treasurer. Move on to standing committees.
So you will see that each one of you is in one of the categories, with the exception of our finance committee. We do have the late and great Mr. Barry Willett as serving in that committee, so we'll need to replace him for sure. Gary is the other finance committee member.
Would it make sense for me as treasurer to be there?
Are you volunteering?
I am
So
actually.
who's not on the committee?
Leroy.
Leroy is not on any committees. Put him on negotiations.
Yeah,
Is there-
I don't
is-
have to accept any.
Is there one committee that looks interesting to you, Leroy?
Where's the list of committees?
The last one.
Oh, that's the one I hit. Yeah, I hit it on purpose.
So, I mean, Ben, let's go through these for our new people. Finance committee, how often do you guys meet, Gary?
We've never met.
Okay. Facilities committee, you guys meet a couple times a year, right?
Yeah.
Negotiations committee, we meet every 2 years for 3 years.
That's
It's
fair.
like, it's the longest time of your life, don't pick that one. Policy committee, we don't really meet that often, because we haven't really had an opportunity to or need to.
Yep.
I don't know about vocational advisory.
Vocational advisory is 4 meetings a year. I think it's 4 meetings a year.
And that's at the tech center, right?
It is.
It's 6 meetings.
Oh, it's 6 meetings.
Nada,
Yes.
6.
Yeah. And I will say, I think Izzy's a little overwhelmed because she hasn't been able to make any of them to date. It might be just a bad time by the day.
I mean, I will make a pitch for the educational advisory. I was on the committee for a little while. It was actually really useful to know what was going on at Tech Tech. Because you basically get an idea of what they're doing over there that's up to date and pretty current. I was on that. It was
Those meetings are what time, Giselle?
3:30 this year so far.
Yeah, and I think we have pushed back at 4 o'clock sometimes. I don't know if
Sometimes,
you can swing that later on.
Probably not with work. I mean, unless you do it after 5.
dropout prevention.
Once a year.
I don't know about the adult advisory thing. I'm on that board. I might have missed it.
Yeah, I don't either. Educator effectiveness, really, there hasn't been, it was just a form, the committee, and we had decided that, that representatives from our negotiation committee can be part of that, because it does involve teachers and working conditions. So we said if we ever reconvene that, we'll select from our negotiations committee. Technology committee is, Keith, what, once a year? Once a year. And then Valley Unified, used to be 6, 7 meetings a year. It seems like it's down to 4.
Felt like 6, 7 times a week for a while.
Yeah, I did. I will say that with regard to the Valley Unified, Gary and Toby, you've actually termed out, so you have to get reappointed because it's a 3-year term. So you'd have to be blessed in again for another 3-year term.
When does that happen?
They've actually expired.
Really?
Motion to select Toby Johndro and Gary Sibley to the Valley Unified Regional Service Center Board.
Second.
Any other motions?
Lucky.
All those in favor?
Now you know who your friends are.
Opposed?
Is that a joke or did you?
That was a
say-
joke, that was a joke.
Okay.
So Leroy, anything interest you?
Yeah, I wouldn't mind taking, for starters, the Barry's open slot in finance.
Okay. Everyone good with that?
Yep. Just out of curiosity, so there's seats that are opening, so let's say my seat gets taken by somebody else, what does that mean? Does that mean that they're actually going to take those spots too, or are they just vacant again?
It's likely that this group here will nominate them to that seat, to fill your seat.
Whether they like it or not, I think Isabel has some seats because of that. I think that's how she gets.
Or it's whoever's not at that meeting.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Is everybody else good with where things stand?
Where do we stand as far as remote participation on committee meetings? I don't think the regional service center, we ever really discussed that.
No. We would have to bring that same policy to that committee, yep. It's a good point, Keith.
I have a question, I guess, not pertaining to any of that. Do we not have student representatives on the board at Enrollment?
We do. They're usually appointed this time of the year. Usually that comes from Mr. Kaleta's office, so we'll see that we can get those appointed soon.
Move on to American Rescue Plan, ESSER fund.
This round of grants was a lot more comprehensive, a lot more work than the previous ones. And I did share with you in an email that I sent to you. I have submitted your initial application just so that we have something that has been submitted, but we can go back in and revise and remove. So just so that we are officially submitted, that's there. I did learn today that our construction projects in that plan, and we have a couple, and I'll go over them, but one, just to give you an idea, we're looking to, where you see those makeshift walls there, we're actually looking to build a GT room back there, because this just doesn't work. So that's just one, and we have a couple of others. I did learn today that these construction programs, because they're not state funded, and I'm sorry if I'm going off on a tangent here, your other CRF funds and ESSER funds were funds that were given to the state of Maine, and then they became state of Maine funds to give to the local school district. This round of grant, ESSER ARP, comes directly from the federal government. It's not state, so it's coming from the feds, and that opens up a whole different can of requirements. The state of Maine actually has a statute that says when we receive funds from the feds, we actually have to have a referendum vote on it. So if it pertains to construction, so we will have to have a referendum vote to approve these construction programs that obviously your local taxpayers are going to say, well, yeah, the feds can pay for that instead of us, but it's just another hoop that we have to jump through. While I'm speaking of hoops that we have to jump through, I had to, on our district website, and I'm going to put it up here for us to see, I had to publicly present our plan for school reintegration. That has to stay on our district website, our back to school plan, which we must revisit every 6 months, has to stay there till September 2024. So that's a must under ESSER ARP. That's got to stay there so the public can review that anytime they want to. Another thing they must be able to review is our use of funds plan. So what I'm presenting to you tonight, in what we put in the plan, is in this publicly available use of funds plan. And I'm going to use the plan to guide our conversation this evening. So in our use of funds plan, I do go over what the American Rescue Plan is, how much was allocated to Maine, and how much MSAD 27's share of Maine's allocation is. Your allocation was $1.8 million. And as I explained to you before, 20% of that has to be allocated to learning loss. So when you're going through the application, it actually won't let you submit anything until you've secured that 20%. The remaining 1.2 mil can go on to anything like our other grants that helps us respond to the pandemic. And we can use the funds for this year, next school year, and the following school year. So it's 3 years worth of funding if we wanted to stretch out that long. It goes through the allowable uses of funds. This one really hit on different programs and different things that are already in law. So it talks about the Perkins Act, it talks about the IDEA Act, it talks about all the things that are currently in law that you can use the funds for with regards to learning loss. And then it also talks about the things that you can do to your facilities and how to respond to the pandemic safely as well. I do talk about disallowable uses, so we can't supplant our school budget, we can't use it for things that are not related to COVID-19. So example, we can't pay for winter heating costs with ESSER funds, we can't do that. We can't pay our regular administrator or regular teacher salaries, it's not allowable. We can't do building repairs that have nothing to do with COVID-19. So we want to paint our hallway, that has nothing to do with COVID-19, so it has to be related to the pandemic. I also include the US CDC's recommendations, the Maine CDC's standard operating procedures, and a link to our Safe Return to School plan that's also on our website. As part of the process, we had to engage stakeholders in the process. When you saw the agenda for tonight, you might have noticed that this agenda item said public comment opportunity. This was another opportunity for us to say, hey, we're going to be talking about the American Rescue Plan. Come talk about it if you want to. I don't believe we have public that's here, although we may have public online that may be engaged by the conversation we're happening and have follow-up questions, which I entertain. So we did send a stakeholder feedback survey in early August to kind of help guide us, and I know, Toby, we don't like surveys, but I had to do something. So it is possible that people did respond to this multiple times. I view that as, hey, they're engaged in the process. So this was to gain access to stakeholder feedback from students. I had to identify any union groups that we have, so you'll see MEA Association for our teachers and ed techs are represented. Our Teamsters Association is represented. Non-union staff members are represented. Parents of elementary students, parents of middle high school students, and then community members at large. Our initial survey had 158 responses, and you can see the spread on who were, the respondents. The largest group was our groups of parents. So actually our staff members here, MEA, and then our Fort Kent VRMS CHS parents. And we asked very simple questions. With regards to learning loss, what do you think we should consider to spend this money on for learning loss? Our number one answer was pull out intervention services for students. Our number two answer was class size reduction. Our number three answer was enrichment programs. We asked what would be a second priority. Again, enrichment programs, credit recovery programs, and we also have student-centered coaching that comes out in there as well, and pull out intervention services. So that's what the public is saying with regards to learning loss. Then we go into other projects. What do you think we should use the money for other projects? The number one answer is repairing and improving our school facilities, followed by improving air quality, and I'm not sure what that one is. Another purple one. Then for a second priority, the number one answer is coordinating preparedness for the pandemic. We also have improving air quality again, and repairing and improving our school facilities. So it's quite clear that we have a trend. For learning loss, we want our kids to have services and enrichment programs. For the other money, we want better air and better school facility type things. We looked at all of the comments. Those are always helpful, some not so helpful. One thing that I did note that after I had submitted the survey is we didn't capture another demographic group. So I did send out a follow-up survey. It did not generate as many responses, but I had to identify who of the respondents were representing children with disabilities, English learners, children who are experiencing homelessness, foster care students, migratory students, and this is all part of the application. We have to say that we've engaged these groups. You can see that most people that responded, 68, half of them said we don't represent any of those groups. But we did have quite a few that said children with disabilities, we represent those, and a couple of other categories as well. Same questions were asked, pretty similar answers: pull out intervention services, enrichment programs, student-centered coaching. So you see the similar trends to those responses. With the other programs, they're saying air quality, they're saying repairing your facilities. So very similar responses. So we met as an admin team, and we looked at this, and we got to work on, okay, let's create some projects to address that. This is a summary of the major projects that we have. I did share with you the full application that has every project, but these are the major categories. So we're proposing student-centered coaching, which is a pull-out intervention service, so we're getting both bangs for our buck there for this year, next year, and the following year. At Fort Kent Elementary School, we have an academic interventionist here at the middle high school. Again, pull-out services for students, more pull-out services for this year, next year, and the following year. Your principals have put together a district-wide summer school for academic support program for 3 years. So that was this summer, next summer, and the following summer. Your middle high school will entertain vacation school for academic support, and that's during February break and April break, Mr. Kaleta?
Correct.
And then district-wide after-school academic support and enrichment for 22, 23, and 24. Out of the required $360,000 that we needed to spend, so the 20%, we actually exceeded that by $417,000. So our total learning loss projects is $778,000. So we exceeded that 20%, no problem. And we think we're hitting on all those things that we heard: pullout, enrichment, extended school year type things. So we think we're in line with what our stakeholders are saying. On the other side, you see our other plans. We do have some classroom furniture projects to encourage social distancing. We have a temporary support personnel, which is our floating substitute program that we'd like to continue for another year. We have our district curriculum projects to support new curriculums in the program. We've already had some with other funds, but we need to continue with that. We have facility improvement projects that are going to help support the need for learning spaces in our buildings. And we do have some district technology improvements, including additional clear touch monitors and improved security camera systems at Fort Kent Elementary School. We also, and it didn't fit here, we have improving air quality, specifically the second floor of this building. We're looking at an air conditioning project, so that whenever we're looking at canceling school because it's too hot, we always go to second floor CHS to take temperature measurements because it's the hottest area. We're looking at a heat pump on one end of the hallway, the other end blowing air at each other with the big fans that we got through our other projects. And we're looking to lower the temperature of our second floor because that is what gets hot. This is essentially the big pieces of what we're doing. There's a lot of other little things. There's another school bus in this application. There is a new tractor for the district, and our justification for that is moving of supplies has really increased, including our school meals. Whenever we do remote bus deliveries, we've had some of our bus drivers go out on injury leave because they've been lifting heavy boxes. So we're trying to secure a tractor to help with the movement of that. Again, trying to wrap around COVID and all of those things. So we've come up with an additional $1,026,000 in our other plans under this as well. One thing that is not highlighted in this, because I created this before I shared the final project, is something that Keith actually sparked my interest with, and it's the possibility of using funds for a vaccination incentive program. So what we are proposing, and it's not on this slide, I apologize. What we're proposing is we had $100,000 left of available funds that was there to put in the application. We crunched some numbers. We have 170 full-time staff and about 10 staff that work between 20 and 30 hours that are part-time. We know that they're not all vaccinated, but many of them are. We shared with you almost 80%. What we'd like to do is do a vaccination incentive program where everybody who has received full vaccination status or will get full vaccination status, we will provide them a one-time payment of $500 for full-time employees. Part-time employees would be a one-time payment of $250. We've crunched the numbers with that, and we come out just shy of $100,000, $97,000 or so, if everybody was to get vaccinated. We know not everyone will, but our thought process here is, and you'll see it in the comments from the survey that we got, there's a lot of attention that neighboring school districts have given money to their employees as an incentive bonus pay type thing. We're thinking this is another creative way to give an incentive to employees, but also thank them for just doing their job and getting vaccinated as we've been asking. And hopefully, maybe there's a couple employees that are holding on, that maybe this will encourage them to go ahead and get vaccinated. It's a thought, right now it's in the application as a placeholder. I did want to get your thoughts around it. There is allowable uses of this. When you look in the regulations, you can do incentive programs, and actually the feds they actually recommend vaccination incentives. So it is an allowable use. Anybody have thoughts around that?
I guess I'd be opposed to it. I don't think we should be taking a position where we're essentially forcing people or encouraging something that is so controversial. It's really not even approved right now. There's so many issues with it. Why should we not be rewarding someone that wants to not be vaccinated?
Yeah, we thought about this as well. I'm fearful because Maine is one of those states with the OSHA thing that's going on that we may have a situation where we're going to be forced to require our employees to vaccinate. I want to make a best effort to encourage before we have to force, because I never want to tell an employee they don't have a job anymore because they decided not to get a shot. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. This should be a question of what people want for themselves. We're just trying to wrap our minds around how to encourage before we have to tell somebody you have to. And that was our thought process. But I agree wholeheartedly with your thoughts there, Gary. Any other thoughts, you guys?
I guess have we also considered newer, since we do, have a turnaround of employees relatively high, have we considered like employees that'll be leaving the district or coming in, and how they would play into an incentive program?
As far as?
I don't know, let's just say we give someone the $500 who is vaccinated, can they turn around and decide,
To leave.
2 weeks later to go?
Yep.
And leave?
Good
Or
point.
we hire someone in after incentives have been given who is vaccinated, would they also qualify for that?
It's a good point.
How long would that exist for?
Right, that's a good point. And we could probably put some safeguards around maybe after 1 year of employment type thing, or that type of thing. I'm not married to the vaccination. I needed to spend $100,000 at the 11th hour, and I put this as a program.
What a lottery. Anyone who's vaccinated gets put in the lottery, get $100,000 if you win. You get a 1 in 123 chance to get more vaccinations, I bet.
Was that serious?
I think it's a good thing. It's only half.
I guess I also feel a little wonky about incentivizing something that's so controversial.
Yep.
Like, I do have a heartache about that. But I do love the idea of giving staff some money, because they've been working like crazy.
Guys, we don't have to call this an incentive program. We can say we're rewarding our employees and make it just a staff thank you. That's been approved in other districts. I know it can be approved here. I mean, we can't offer a full week's pay to everyone, but we can offer $500.
Well, I think initially we brought up possibly awarding a personal time off day, but not everybody receives PTO
Right.
in the same way or fashion, and we can't always accommodate people with that extra time off.
Yeah.
Right.
And in this case, it would be just such a tremendous amount of time off, it would meet the needs of the school district,
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
so.
Yeah.
See, and I think I feel better
Everybody
about,
takes Monday off.
I think I would feel better about it being time off as opposed to a money thing as far as a vaccination thing, but
We don't want people to take time off. So.
well, I know that we can't handle it. I like the idea of it theoretically,
It might not even be approved at this point.
Yeah.
but I guess I like the idea of.
Are we married to what you put in there, or can it change?
No, it can change. No, absolutely. It's very flexible. I can ask any day to go in and change things.
When does it become?
It's
No.
flexible for 4 years.
Oh.
The difficulty is once it's approved, then it becomes a little bit more cumbersome on removing an approved program and going, but it's not a big deal.
I guess I would be more inclined to, if we're gonna give a teacher the thank you. I mean, we don't know what the future is gonna be, right? We hope that it just gets easier and easier.
Right.
So it would be nice to do it.
I have something to
current
say,
ones.
actually.
Yep.
So, Are we bound to have it be something COVID related?
Yes.
So we couldn't find a way to pass in something to the effect of using it as recruitment because of, rather than just, I mean, look, I get a bonus every day when I go to work and I get my paycheck. I mean, I'm not trying to be that person,
Yeah.
but I am. You know, why not give an incentive to draw people in rather than just throwing money at people who
And
are
that- and that's
here? And I don't
something-
mean that in
No, no,
any
no.
disrespectful way, but I'm not gonna get on board with anything that incentivizes anything like that, or mask related, or anything like that. I'm just not having it.
Right. One thing that we discussed, Leroy, is that whenever you provide a bonus to somebody who doesn't work for you to come work for you, the people who work for you go, I've been here 20 years, you know? And we saw that in negotiations when we talked about sign-on bonuses, you know, to attract drivers. The current drivers saying, yeah, but what about me? You know, and some of that I have a hard time with, but some of that I kind of have to say, well, yeah, I guess.
I get it. Trust me, I mean, I get it. I mean, nobody wants to think that somebody else is getting something over on them, but I mean, in the grander scheme of things, I mean, it's supposed to be our job to, you know, look out for what's coming in the future,
Yep.
not only just at this very moment in time.
Yep. And again, I'm not married to an incentive or an employee pay anything. I think, you know, we told our employees during negotiations that we're very favorable in negotiations because of what they've been through. So I think we've already paid it forward, and none of your employees have asked for this. So don't think that this is something that, we can use the money otherwise. We put out an idea, we're not married to it. We could use additional social work services, to help address, you know, mental health issues. There are other ideas that we can come up with. I just wanted to pitch this to you, see what your thoughts are, and we'll move accordingly.
I think we should come up with other ideas. I mean, we talked about the whole mask thing and listening to our medical personnel and everything. You look around the country, how many doctors and nurses are giving up their jobs because they don't agree with the vaccine? So I think I think it's too controversial to, I think we could use the money better other places.
Well, I think first of all, we'd be perfectly clear, we're not mandating anybody within the school district to get the vaccine.
Yeah.
It's not happening right now.
Right.
This is an incentive. Not a punishment.
But why should we incentivize something that's so controversial?
I don't think doing the right thing is controversial, McCary.
In your opinion, that's the right thing. But when you have medical people that are quitting their careers because they do not want to get vaccinated, it speaks volumes. I think we can use the money better somewhere else.
I think we keep it where it is until you come up with something else.
Yep.
Because we're holding a spot. They're not gonna, this is the federal government, they're not gonna make a decision tomorrow. I think, I'm fine with having a discussion, but I think we keep the spot held so we don't lose it. And I think we have a discussion, that'd be what I would suggest.
Right, we will not give any, even if we were approved tomorrow, we would not give any incentive pay until this board approved it. So you don't have to worry about that. But we'll go back to the drawing board and we'll come up with some alternative ideas to take to you, and see what your thoughts are about those alternative ideas, and maybe we can go from there.
So you're still looking for a motion?
I would just like your, listen, if we can even approve pending, you know, that incentive program one, I would appreciate that. Just so I can straight face, say that we have board approval, for the submission of our plan.
Can we approve it like as a draft document?
You can?
Does that do the same thing?
You can. I just, because in this plan, I say school committee approval, I say that we have approval. I just want to be able, in our plan, to say we have approval, but I can even say, you know, pending, and I can put that in parentheses, pending, you know, what we decide to do with a final project.
But as I understand it, like, everything's kind of still on the table on this, it's not just that particular issue, right? I mean, if we decide that there's an immediate need that comes up that supplants something you suggested,
Yep.
the goal is to change it anyway if needed.
Right.
Okay.
So,
This is just as far as the truth, it's an interim plan as it is, it's not a final plan.
right.
And I would move to approve this interim plan.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous? A motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second? All those in favor?
I approve. Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Yes. You guys are still doing jury?
Oh, yeah.
For a year?
It's 1 month.
Kelly's coming out.
Yeah, I did not get that.
And don't be a stranger to stop yours. Yeah. Your boat out of the water yet?
Yeah, pulled it out last weekend. Pouring rain, whatever day it was pouring rain, Sunday.
Don't say that when there are many students.
Was a little sad.
Are you gonna be here for a minute? I have a check for Mallory.
Wow.
Keep trying to catch each other.
Yes, I will be here.
Okay, I'll be right back.
I had a hard time finding a place to store it.
Where'd you end up putting it?
Madawaska, I found my father actually found a guy at the farm that's gonna house it, so I'm good, but couldn't find anything in town.
Steve Pelletier, just back full of stuff. I built a couple of shed roofs off my garage.
Yeah.
So just drop the canopy down,
Slide it under there.
put that in under there.
That's what I'll have to do eventually. I can't see myself begging and essentially what I did this year. Will you please take my boat? Well, Gary? How good is that?
Totally got found on that.
Yeah. That was a plan.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Picked up. I think it might throw a little wrench in his plan. He's getting sort of back out of that.
Yep. Good call. Well, it's been a pleasure, sir.
Yes, you too.
Don't lose my number.
Oh, no.
It's significant. No. I'm like, I hope I can fall asleep. Yeah, I'm really upset.
My tongue is bleeding.
You're good. Listen, I've been saying that is a skill, man, that nobody else has. Oh, no, the mask helps, I'm sure.
And that's what we did.
There's nothing that surprises me.
No, this is didn't. But this is a good number, it's not punishing you. It's rewarding those.
She just feels that she doesn't.
To do the right thing. That's, you don't, it's not punishing you. That's the choice. You know what, your choices have consequences in our couch.
Unlike our other boards, this board really has polar opposites. You know,
And the opposite doesn't allow. Hey, I don't listen to teachers, there's no meeting. They don't have an open mind. Oh my God. Oh, Mallory, I said thank you very much.
she enjoyed it.
He enjoyed it. He was so tough, like, Mallory dogs out for us. Oh, goodness.
He was so tired, we got home, I didn't even think he wanted to come see me. That's good, that's
He's
good.
moving in,
Yes.
he's moving in.
No, she enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, have a good night.
Too.
Night.
No, make sure when I'll use that tractor.
She is just.
It's quite a thing.
C'est comme une route Bowie. And if he or she or he would speak up, no, it's a bike path. They're intimidating.
He's the best one to serve this.
Yeah.
The one they.
Yeah. He did well.
He's been here.
Yeah. Like a little more level.
It doesn't even make any sense.
Miss Sven Bonjour, Mambo. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. I'll be in Madawaska tomorrow.
I wanted to say it again. Maybe I didn't word it right. I wasn't, and Ben, so you know that too, maybe I didn't word it the right way, but my comment wasn't to say that the teachers didn't deserve that. It was more so, let's take that money and, I mean, that's $100,000, let's, I mean, because while I sat there, I got 7 messages.
During that, people watched.
Oh yeah, they were just going, and I'm a teacher and I feel that I should have that money.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, so I'll be very unpopular tomorrow.
The only thing I worry about, like, as an incentive
Military?
to people is that they leave. Like, we have so many people that text us saying they'll.
Oh,
start
okay,
to
thanks.
pay up. Well, because we don't
Goodbye.
really have to
Right,
pay it, but it's
Yeah.
not, you know, we just don't ask before that, so.
I get it, I mean, look, I mean, trust me, I get it.
Yeah.
But, I had to